What happens when prejudice meets compassion? In a bustling cafe, a racist outburst sets the stage for an extraordinary act of grace and humanity. How far can one moment of kindness go to change a life forever? The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air at Café Serenity, a quaint, bustling spot in the heart of the city. Patrons sipped lattes and nibbled on pastries while soft jazz played in the background. Among them sat Dr. Michael Carter, a tall, poised man in his late 30s, reviewing notes on his tablet. His tailored blazer and polished demeanor hinted at his profession as a surgeon, but his warm smile and relaxed posture made him approachable. Michael had chosen this cafe as his temporary workspace while he waited for a meeting across town. It was his usual habit to find calm moments in places like these, immersing himself in his work while enjoying the hum of life around him. Enter Karen Collins. In her early 50s, Karen was known for her commanding presence, often walking into a room as if she owned it. She was dressed impeccably in a beige coat and scarf, her blonde hair styled in a perfect bob. Her sharp blue eyes scanned the cafe, seeking the best seat. As she approached the counter, her brisk tone and impatience drew attention. "Can you move this line any faster?" she snapped at the barista, ignoring the murmurs from the other customers. With her coffee in hand, Karen scanned the seating area, her gaze landing on Michael. Her demeanor shifted subtly, her posture stiffened, and a frown formed on her lips. A black man, dressed professionally yet unassuming, sitting in a corner with papers spread across his table. Something about the sight irked her. Karen approached an empty seat nearby but kept glancing at Michael, her irritation growing. To her, he didn't fit the space she often frequented. Perhaps it was his calm confidence or the way others seemed to respect his quiet presence. Whatever it was, Karen felt the need to assert herself. Michael noticed her stares but chose to ignore them, focusing instead on the patient case files in front of him. He was no stranger to moments like these. Unspoken judgments and veiled hostility weren't new to him, but today, he decided to prioritize peace over confrontation. Karen, however, had other plans. She leaned toward a barista clearing a nearby table and whispered loud enough for Michael to hear, "Is this some kind of open seating policy? I mean, shouldn't there be a standard for who occupies these spaces?" The barista, a young man in his 20s, paused awkwardly before replying, "Everyone's welcome here, ma'am. He's a customer like anyone else." Karen huffed, her cheeks reddening slightly. "Well, it doesn't feel very welcoming," she muttered, glancing back at Michael. Unbothered, Michael continued his work, but the tension in the air was palpable. Other patrons began to notice Karen's behavior, exchanging uneasy looks. The stage was set for what would become an unforgettable encounter, one that would not only test Michael's patience, but also redefine Karen's view of the world. The cafe buzzed with its usual mid-morning energy, but Karen Collins wasn't blending in. Her irritation was growing as she glared at Dr. Michael Carter, who remained immersed in his work. Karen, sipping her coffee with exaggerated disdain, could no longer keep her thoughts to herself. "Excuse me," she said sharply, standing and approaching Michael's table. Her voice was loud enough to draw attention from nearby patrons. Michael looked up, his calm brown eyes meeting hers. "Yes?" he asked, his tone polite but wary. Karen crossed her arms, her expression a mix of indignation and superiority. "I don't mean to be rude, but don't you think this isn't exactly the place for whatever it is you're doing?" She gestured vaguely at his open tablet and papers. Michael tilted his head slightly, unfazed. "I'm just catching up on some work. Is there a problem?" Karen scoffed. "Well, it's not a library, is it? People come here to relax, not to see. Someone turned this place into an office." The subtle tension in her words didn't go unnoticed by Michael, nor by the other patrons who had started watching the exchange. He folded his hands calmly on the table. "I wasn't aware my presence was causing a disruption," he said evenly. Karen's voice grew sharper. "It's not about disruption, it's about respect for the space. Maybe if you were a little more considerate." The young barista from earlier, overhearing the confrontation, hesitated before stepping forward. "Ma'am, is everything okay here?" he asked, his voice steady but nervous. Karen spun around, No, it's not okay. This man is taking up space and making the atmosphere uncomfortable. Shouldn't you have some rules about this sort of thing? The barista looked between Karen and Michael, his discomfort evident. He's not breaking any rules, he said softly. He's just working like anyone else. Karen's face flushed, but she wasn't backing down. Well, I feel uncomfortable. Isn't that worth something? By now, a small crowd of patrons had started paying close attention. Some exchanged whispers, while others subtly recorded the scene on their phones. Michael, still seated, exhaled slowly before speaking. Ma'am, I have every right to be here, just as much as you do. I'm a paying customer and I'm minding my own business. If that bothers you, I suggest you speak with management instead of confronting me directly. Karen's mouth tightened, her frustration bubbling over. You're awfully smug for someone who's clearly out of place here, she snapped. I bet you don't even belong in this neighborhood. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, shocking everyone who heard them. Gasps rippled through the cafe as Karen's true intentions became clear. Michael's jaw tightened momentarily, but he maintained his composure. Standing slowly, he met Karen's gaze head-on. You have no idea who I am, and yet you've decided I don't belong. Why is that exactly? Karen faltered, momentarily caught off guard by his calm but pointed question. I just don't think this is the right place for... She trailed off, realizing she had little ground to stand on. The young woman who had been quietly filming the exchange finally spoke up. This is disgusting, she said loudly, addressing Karen. You don't get to decide who belongs somewhere and who doesn't. Another man near the counter chimed in. Yeah, lady, you're way out of line. Leave him alone. Karen, flustered by the backlash, turned on her heel and marched toward the door. This is ridiculous, she muttered. I won't be coming back here. As she exited, the cafe burst into murmurs. Some patrons approached Michael, offering words of support, while others expressed their disgust at Karen's behavior. Thank you, Michael said graciously, though he appeared weary. He sat back down, his composed exterior barely hiding the frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Little did Karen know, this would not be her last encounter with the man she had so publicly humiliated. The atmosphere in Café Serenity was electric in the wake of Karen's dramatic exit. Patrons who had witnessed the confrontation were left buzzing with indignation and a sense of collective responsibility to make things right. Can you believe her? One woman whispered to her friend. The audacity to treat someone like that, right here in public. The young woman who had recorded the scene on her phone stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. She approached Michael, still seated, and spoke with urgency. I got the whole thing on video, she said. The way she talked to you was unacceptable, and people need to see this. If you're okay with it, I'd like to post it online. Michael looked up from his tablet, his brow furrowing slightly. He considered her words carefully, then nodded. If you think it'll help people understand why this kind of behavior has to stop, go ahead. She smiled, her determination evident. It's not just about you. It's about everyone who's ever been treated like that. Thank you for staying calm. You showed more grace than most people could in that situation. As she moved to upload the video, other patrons began voicing their support for Michael. You handled that so well, man, said a middle-aged man in a business suit, offering Michael a handshake. She was completely out of line. Another woman, seated near the counter, chimed in. You didn't deserve that, no one does. Thank you for standing your ground. The barista, who had been silently stewing with guilt over not intervening sooner, approached Michael nervously. I should have done more, he admitted. I'm really sorry. I froze. I didn't know how to handle someone like her. Michael offered a small, reassuring smile. You're not the only one who felt that way. It's not easy to confront prejudice when it's happening in real time. But next time, remember that silence can feel like agreement. Speak up when it matters. The barista nodded solemnly. I will, he promised. Meanwhile, outside the cafe, Karen paced furiously on the sidewalk, her phone pressed to her ear. She vented to a friend, loudly justifying her actions. "I wasn't being rude. I was just saying what everyone else was thinking. He didn't belong there." Unbeknownst to her, passers-by were glancing in her direction, their faces reflecting a mix of judgment and disbelief. Karen's loud, entitled tone only added to the spectacle. Back inside, the video began gaining traction almost immediately. By the time the cafe's usual lunchtime crowd started trickling in, the post had already been shared hundreds of times. Comments poured in, condemning Karen's behavior and praising Michael's composed response. "This is exactly why we need to keep calling out racism," one comment read. "Michael is a class act." Another user wrote, "She walked out of there like she was the victim. People like her don't deserve to go unchecked." As the cafe buzzed with new energy, Michael packed up his belongings and prepared to leave. Though he appreciated the support, he felt emotionally drained from the encounter. Before he left, the young woman who had uploaded the video stopped him. "You're going to make a difference," she said firmly. "This isn't just about her, it's about showing people what resilience looks like." Michael thanked her and stepped outside, where he noticed Karen still lingering, her expression a mix of anger and embarrassment. She glared at him briefly before turning away, unwilling to acknowledge the man she had tried to humiliate. But Michael didn't dwell on her reaction. He walked away with his head held high, unaware of just how far-reaching the consequences of that day would be. Outside the cafe, Karen Collins' frustration was boiling over. Her face flushed with embarrassment, she paced the sidewalk while ranting into her phone. "Can you believe this?" she spat. "I was just standing up for myself, and now everyone's acting like I'm the bad guy." The person on the other end mumbled something unintelligible, but Karen was too agitated to listen. She gestured dramatically, her voice growing louder. "It's not like I said anything wrong. That cafe used to have standards, and now look at it." Unbeknownst to Karen, a few onlookers were recording her outburst. Some people standing nearby exchanged disapproving glances, shaking their heads at her display. Suddenly, Karen's voice faltered. She stumbled, clutching her chest. A sharp pain radiated through her arm and up to her neck, stealing the breath from her lungs. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the sidewalk as she crumpled to her knees. "Help! I can't breathe!" she gasped, her voice faint and strained. The people nearby froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. One woman screamed, "Somebody call 911!" while another rushed to Karen's side. Inside the cafe, Michael was just gathering his things when he heard the commotion outside. Curious, he glanced out the window and saw a small crowd gathering around someone on the ground. He frowned and stepped outside, his instincts as a doctor immediately taking over. As he approached, his heart skipped a beat. There, lying on the sidewalk, was Karen, the very woman who had humiliated him moments earlier. Her face was pale, her breathing labored, and her hands clutched at her chest. Without hesitation, Michael dropped his bag and knelt beside her. "I'm a doctor," he announced firmly to the crowd. "Give me space to work." Karen's eyes fluttered open, and she recognized him instantly. Her expression shifted from shock to fear. "You," she croaked, barely able to form the words. Michael met her gaze briefly, his voice calm but commanding. "Don't try to talk. You're having a heart attack." He turned to a bystander and instructed, "Call 911 now and tell them we have a middle-aged woman experiencing a possible myocardial infarction." Another bystander offered a jacket, which Michael carefully placed under Karen's head. "Karen, I need you to stay as calm as possible," he said gently. "You're going to be okay, but you need to focus on breathing slowly." Karen's fear was palpable, her earlier arrogance completely stripped away. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered hoarsely. Michael's expression softened, but his focus remained on stabilizing her. "Because it's the right thing to do," he replied simply. Minutes later, the sound of sirens pierced the tense silence. Paramedics arrived, and Michael quickly relayed her symptoms and the steps he'd taken to assist. The paramedics nodded, impressed by his composure and expertise. "Your intervention made all the difference," one paramedic said as they prepared Karen for transport. "You likely saved her life." As the ambulance doors closed, Karen's eyes remained fixed on Michael. Despite her weakened state, the weight of her earlier actions hit her like a tidal wave. Here was the man she had ridiculed and tried to demean, now standing as her savior. Michael stood silently as the ambulance pulled away, a mix of emotions washing over him. He hadn't helped Karen to prove a point or to earn recognition. He had done it because he believed in compassion, even when it wasn't reciprocated. The bystanders who had witnessed the entire scene were in awe. A young man approached Michael, shaking his head in disbelief. "Man, I can't believe you just did that after what she said to you. You're a better person than most." Michael offered a faint smile. "It's not about being better. It's about doing what's right." As he walked away, the weight of the day settled on his shoulders. But little did he know, his actions had sparked a chain reaction, one that would lead to a moment Karen would never forget. The ambulance sped through the streets, lights flashing and sirens blaring as Karen Collins lay on the stretcher, her breathing shallow but steady. Paramedics worked swiftly, checking her vitals and administering oxygen. Karen's mind raced, her thoughts clouded by both physical pain and the realization of what had just happened. The man she had humiliated, the man she had wanted to drive out of the cafe, had been the one to save her life. As they arrived at the hospital, Karen was rushed into the emergency room. The attending physicians, briefed by Michael, already had a clear picture of her condition. "We're looking at a mild myocardial infarction," one doctor said. "Luckily, she received immediate care, or this could have been far worse." Karen's heart sank. She knew she owed her survival to Michael's intervention. The weight of her earlier actions began to settle in, a mix of shame, regret, and gratitude she couldn't yet put into words. Meanwhile, back at the cafe, the story of what had happened spread rapidly. Patrons shared their first-hand accounts of Karen's confrontation with Michael, followed by his selfless act of saving her. The young woman who had recorded the initial encounter posted an update to her video. "This man, Dr. Michael Carter, stayed calm through everything, even when Karen tried to humiliate him. Then, when she collapsed, he stepped up and saved her life without hesitation. If that's not grace, I don't know what is." The updated video quickly went viral, with thousands of shares and comments pouring in. Some condemned Karen's behavior, while others praised Michael's character. "This is the kind of story that restores your faith in humanity," one comment read. Another said, "Doctor. Carter is a class act. Karen's lucky he was there." As Michael returned home that evening, he noticed the notifications piling up on his phone. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers had sent messages of support and admiration. Though he appreciated the kind words, he was reluctant to dwell on the attention. For him, the day's events were less about heroism and more about doing what he'd sworn to do as a doctor: help people, no matter who they were or what they'd done. The following morning, Karen regained full consciousness in her hospital room. The events of the previous day played over in her mind like a broken record. Her chest ached, not just from the heart attack, but from the weight of her guilt. A nurse entered, carrying a clipboard and offering a kind smile. "Good morning, Ms. Collins. How are you feeling?" Karen managed a weak nod. "Better," she whispered. Then, hesitating, she asked, "The doctor who helped me, is he here?" The nurse's expression brightened. "Dr. Carter? He's not on staff here, but he left notes for your care team. He's the reason you got here in time." Karen's throat tightened. "I need to thank him," she said softly. The nurse nodded. "He made quite an impression on everyone. I can pass along a message if you'd like." As Karen rested, she resolved to do more than just thank Michael. She needed to confront her own actions and offer a sincere apology, knowing that words alone might not be enough. Karen Collins sat in her hospital bed, the faint beep of the heart monitor a constant reminder of how close she had come to losing everything. The events of the past day replayed in her mind, her condescending remarks, the humiliation she tried to inflict on Dr. Michael Carter, and his unwavering grace in saving her life despite it all. She picked up her phone and scrolled through notifications, only to find herself at the center of a viral storm. The video of her confrontation with Michael at the cafe had spread across social media, accompanied by updates about how he had saved her life. Comments flooded the post. She tried to belittle him and he still helped her. That's true character. Maybe this will teach her a lesson. People like her need to face the consequences of their actions. Karen's face flushed with embarrassment as she read the scathing critiques of her behavior. But the deeper she delved, the more she realized the truth in their words. She had acted out of prejudice and entitlement, assuming the worst of a man she didn't know. And now that same man had shown her a kindness she hadn't deserved. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. A nurse entered with a gentle smile. "Ms. Collins, how are you feeling?" Karen nodded slowly. "Physically, I'm fine, but I owe someone an apology." The nurse placed a reassuring hand on Karen's arm. "Doctor, Carter left quite an impression. He saved your life, and not just with his medical skills. If you'd like, I can reach out to him for you." Karen hesitated, her voice trembling. "Please do. I need to thank him and make things right." Later that day, Karen received confirmation that Michael would visit. As she waited, she rehearsed what she wanted to say, though no words felt sufficient. When the door finally opened and Michael stepped inside, Karen's breath caught. He looked as composed as he had in the cafe, calm, collected, and professional. But his presence carried an air of quiet authority that made Karen feel small in the best way. "Good afternoon, Ms. Collins," Michael said, standing at the foot of her bed. "I heard you wanted to see me." Karen swallowed hard, her hands clutching the blanket nervously. "Yes. I owe you an apology," she began, her voice cracking. Michael tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable but patient. "I was wrong," Karen continued, tears brimming in her eyes. "The things I said to you, the way I treated you, it was horrible. And you still helped me. You saved my life when I didn't deserve it." Michael's gaze softened, and he pulled up a chair to sit beside her. "Ms. Collins," he said gently, "I didn't save you because you deserved it or didn't deserve it. I saved you because it was the right thing to do. That's what I believe in." Karen let out a shaky breath, her guilt almost overwhelming. "I've been thinking about everything, about why I acted the way I did. I see now how wrong I was, how blind I've been to my own prejudices. I want to change, Dr. Carter. I don't want to be that person anymore." Michael nodded, a faint smile crossing his lips. Acknowledging it is the first step. Change takes time, but it's never too late to start. The two shared a quiet moment, Karen absorbing the weight of his words. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope that she could turn this into an opportunity for growth. As Michael stood to leave, Karen called after him. "Thank you, Dr. Carter, not just for saving my life, but for showing me what grace and integrity really look like." Michael nodded one last time before stepping out, leaving Karen to reflect on how that single encounter had set her on a path she never expected to take. The following afternoon, Michael Carter stood outside Karen Collins' hospital room, a mix of emotions running through him. He hadn't anticipated seeing her again so soon, but when he received the request from the nurse, he decided it was the right thing to do. With a deep breath, he knocked lightly on the door before stepping inside. Karen sat upright in her bed, her complexion still pale but her demeanor markedly different. Her usual air of superiority had been replaced by something far more vulnerable. The moment she saw Michael, her eyes filled with tears, and she struggled to speak. "Dr. Carter," she began, her voice trembling. "Thank you for coming." Michael nodded politely, pulling up a chair and sitting beside her bed. "I heard you wanted to talk," he said, his tone calm but neutral. Karen fidgeted with the blanket draped over her lap, her hands trembling. "I don't know where to begin," she admitted. "Yesterday, I was awful to you. The things I said, the way I acted, I was completely out of line." Michael remained silent, allowing her to gather her thoughts. Karen wiped at her eyes, her voice cracking. "And then, when I needed help the most, you didn't hesitate. You could have walked away. You had every reason to, but you didn't. You saved my life, and I didn't deserve that kind of kindness." Michael leaned forward slightly, his expression softening. "Ms. Collins," he said gently, "I didn't help you because of who you were or what you said. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. That's what I believe in, as a doctor and as a person." Karen let out a shaky breath, the weight of her guilt pressing heavily on her. "I don't know how to make up for what I did," she said, "but I want you to know that I'm going to try. I'm going to change. I don't want to be the person I was yesterday." Michael offered her a small, reassuring smile. "Acknowledging it is a good first step," he said. "Real change takes time, but it's never too late to start." The sincerity in his voice struck Karen deeply. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of hope that she could become someone better. "I'm so sorry," Karen said again, her voice barely above a whisper. "And thank you, not just for saving my life, but for showing me what real grace looks like." Michael nodded, standing to leave. "Take care of yourself, Ms. Collins. I wish you the best in your journey." As he exited the room, Karen watched him go, a mix of gratitude and determination swelling in her chest. She resolved to turn this moment into the foundation for a new chapter in her life, one defined by kindness, humility, and respect. The story of Karen Collins and Dr. Michael Carter spread quickly, becoming a viral sensation both online and in the local community. The Café incident, captured on video by several bystanders, showed Karen's initial outburst and the grace with which Michael responded, not just in the moment, but later, when he saved her life. The internet buzzed with reactions. Social media users flooded the video with comments, debating prejudice, forgiveness, and accountability. "This man is a true hero," one comment read. "The world needs more people like him." Another wrote, "Her behavior was disgusting, but the fact that he still helped her speaks volumes about his character." Karen's name became synonymous with a broader conversation about bias and redemption. Initially, she was mortified by the attention, but as the days passed, she realized the story offered her a rare opportunity to make amends. Not just to Michael, but to others she might have wronged in the past. Karen made a bold decision. She would speak publicly about her experience. In a carefully worded statement shared online, she expressed her regret and vowed to confront her own biases. "I am deeply ashamed of how I acted," she wrote. "Dr. Carter showed me what grace and integrity look like, and I hope to honor his example by changing myself and encouraging others to reflect on their actions." Her admission sparked mixed reactions. While some applauded her for taking accountability, others remained skeptical. "Apologies are easy," one commenter noted. "Real change takes action." Meanwhile, Michael's response to the situation was equally inspiring. When approached for interviews, he declined most, saying, "This isn't about me. It's about creating a world where kindness and respect are the norm, not the exception." Inspired by the story, the cafe where the incident occurred decided to host a series of community events aimed at fostering dialogue about inclusion and understanding. The owner, a passionate advocate for social justice, organized forums and invited local leaders to speak about bias and how to address it. "Everyone is welcome here," the cafe owner said during the first event. "We want this place to be a space where people connect, listen, and learn from one another." Karen attended one of these events, quietly sitting in the back. She listened intently as others shared their experiences with discrimination and resilience. When it was her turn to speak, she hesitated, her voice trembling as she began. "I didn't think I'd ever be standing here," she admitted. "But after what happened with Dr. Carter, I realized how much I have to learn. I want to thank him, not just for saving my life, but for opening my eyes to how I've been living mine." Her words resonated with many in attendance, sparking a heartfelt discussion about the power of change and the importance of accountability. The ripple effects didn't stop there. Inspired by Michael's grace and professionalism, several local businesses began implementing anti-bias training for their employees. Teachers incorporated the story into classroom discussions about empathy and integrity. Michael, for his part, remained focused on his work, quietly mentoring young medical students and volunteering at community health events. To him, the incident was a reminder that every action, no matter how small, could leave a lasting impact. Karen's journey, though far from complete, had already begun to inspire others to reflect on their own behavior. And the cafe, once the site of division, became a symbol of what was possible when people chose understanding over judgment. Months after the life-changing incident at the cafe, both Michael Carter and Karen Collins found themselves on journeys of growth and reflection. For Michael, the experience reaffirmed his commitment to staying true to his values, no matter the circumstances. "Grace isn't about the other person," he had once told a mentee. "It's about who you choose to be, even when it's hard." Karen, on the other hand, had transformed in ways she never thought possible. She began volunteering at local community organizations, focusing on efforts to bridge divides and promote understanding. Her actions weren't about seeking forgiveness, but about creating meaningful change in herself and others. One sunny afternoon, Michael attended a community event at the cafe where it all began. The owner had organized a charity drive to support local schools, turning the space into a vibrant hub of connection and positivity. As Michael mingled with attendees, he noticed Karen standing quietly in a corner, handing out flyers with a genuine smile. Their eyes met briefly, and she walked over, extending a hand. "Dr. Carter," she said softly, her voice steady but humble. "Thank you for everything." Michael shook her hand, offering a small, encouraging nod. "Keep going," he said simply, his words carrying the weight of his belief in her journey. The moment was brief but powerful, a testament to the profound impact of resilience, empathy, and the willingness to change. As the event continued, the cafe buzzed with laughter, conversations, and hope. Michael and Karen's story had become more than just a viral sensation. It was a lesson about humanity's potential to overcome prejudice, one act of kindness at a time.